Did you know that 4 years ago on this date, collegiate athletes could not get paid for the sport that they were playing? That was only 4 years ago. And in 2021, they were able to be paid for their name, image, and likeness by businesses. That opened the door for NIL collectives to act on what the collectives saw as the interest of the school, though communication between schools and NIL collectives are often, of course, because it was illegal until recently, the communication had to be under the table. Well, again, that was 3 years ago. Fast forward to Thursday, and the NCAA settled a deal in which they would provide nearly 15,000 student athletes from 2016 to the 2023 season with a total of 2.8 billion. Though I think about 35% of that is going to the plaintiff's attorneys. So it's less than that. It's less than 2.8 billion to around 15,000, 14,000 student athletes, but still a pretty significant number. And legally, it is in the form of back pay damages, which back pay damages are the money and benefits you would have earned had your employer not discriminated against you. So, yikes. The NCAA definitely lost on that one, and any sense of amateurism is dead. I will say this, part of me feels like this is going way too fast. Another part of me feels as if this should have happened a while ago, because these athletes are skilled. They are making their universities a lot of money. I myself, as a college student, will give a little bit of a private opinion. I think school administrators are making too much money. Give it to some of these student athletes, especially the talented and hardworking ones. The ones who are making the school the most money and getting the most press attention and have the most skill. Why not? So I'm a little conflicted, but what I'm going to try and do here is just report on what has transpired, what's going on, what the road ahead looks like, and also give some of my thoughts on all of this. I truly think that pay to win, if not already legalized, it's now officially enshrined. It is the new rule, pay to win. There is going to be a salary cap for collegiate athletics, which sounds insane, but it is the case. And what is even more insane is the fact that some of these universities, with the millions they will have in cap space, will spend that money on sports that do not earn the money back. They will, of course, as we all know, some people or some groups of people or some countries, nations, whatever, some people make bad decisions, some people make good decisions. And now, instead of it being under the NCAA's control of making a bad or good decision collectively for all the different universities, the universities and the individuals within those universities can make the decisions themselves. I'd be interested in seeing if Ward Manuel's still the athletic director at Michigan, the school that I attend and am a fan of. I would be interested to see how he divides up a potential salary cap. How much does he put toward football? How much does he put toward men's and women's basketball or volleyball or track or cross country or whatever sports there are? I don't know all of them. Baseball and beyond. What does he do? How does he split it up? How will other schools split up their available cap space? This sounds so weird. I'm not supposed to be talking about anything that is the NFL or the NBA or those sports, just period. But here I am, and we're talking about a cap space, and this is going to be the reality. Thankfully, not this year, and I think that's just because the 2024 through 2025 academic and athletic year is literally right around the corner. Most people who aren't taking summer classes. In fact, all people, all athletes, and all college students, including, well, myself, you're either taking summer classes, like myself, or you're not taking classes at all. The winter semester ended about a month ago. So that typically is the conclusion of said academic year or athletic year for most student athletes and most students at universities. So I think that the reason they didn't implement it this year, and instead, from what I can tell, it's 2025 and beyond, is just because it's coming so soon. They obviously want time to implement it. And there are a few wrinkles that have to be ironed out. But overall, there are multiple things that are set in stone. Like, again, estimated 14,500 D1 athletes who played from June 15th, 2016 until the class was established, in this case, November 3rd of 2023. They could have received money for commercial use of their NIL in video games and broadcasts if the NCAA had permitted it. So, therefore, the NCAA is going to give those athletes back the money that, in theory, they could have made. That's where the $2.8 billion comes from. I'm going to link an article from Forbes that mentioned 10 things to know about the NCAA's House settlement by Christy Dosh. I'm going to link it down below. I encourage you to read it. I have read through the article. We are not going to be talking about everything in this video, but we're going to be talking about a lot. But before we dive into just some key points, things that I have written in this video for you guys to see, going back to that pay-to-win portion. The pay-to-win comes directly from, and by pay-to-win I mean the cap space. Think the money that universities themselves will pay to the athletes. I, as convinced by this Forbes article, do not think NIL collectives are useless. In fact, NIL collectives might be more important than ever, because NIL collectives potentially, I don't know if this will be the case. I don't know anything outside of what I'm reading, because I'm not involved in the inner workings of this, nor are most people who are going to be reporting on it. They'll be closer than I am, but they won't be developing this whole new system that's being built before our very eyes. It's kind of beautiful. NIL collectives can be used to circumvent the cap limit, and maybe there are schools who are spending like $100 million per academic athletic year on student athletes. And maybe if you're like Texas or Texas A&M, Ohio State, Miami, Georgia, Alabama, heck, maybe Michigan, some Michigan donor decides to just throw the money at all the different athletes. Maybe 90 million of that 100 million is going to football. Well, now you have, in theory, pay to win. Of course, you have coaching, you have development, you have strength and conditioning. Buying the players who you think are going to be the best will not always produce you the best results. See Jimbo Fisher in 2022. Jimbo Fisher is just really a piece of work. It's absolutely despicable what he did with the talent Texas A&M. And there are, of course, other examples of coaches wasting fine talent. But talent helps a lot. And Ohio State reportedly spent the most, or one of the highest figures, on their transfer portal class and recruiting class in total for the 2024 cycle, because they want to have a big 2024 season. Miami has done similar things. Texas, again, has done similar things, and so on and so forth. And Miami, Ohio State, and Texas, according to all preview magazines for the most part, though I disagree with some of these, are expected to take massive steps forward from last year. And in terms of their average player ranking on their rosters are getting better. And at least they're trying to win, is my point. You are going to see a massive separation, I think, between most schools that try very hard in terms of money and paying their athletes. We're specifically talking about college football here because this is a college football channel, and the schools that don't care about football as much. and maybe they pay more of their millions allotted to basketball. Or, well, we shouldn't even talk about if they pay it to the other sports, because those don't produce revenue. So they'll be dying on a hill that will frankly cause them to die, and no one will remember them for it. We'll just have to see where all of this goes. But I think for the most part, I say most part because there are always outliers, the schools that care about football will continue to advance. The ones that don't will be left in the dust. Again, of course, there will be exceptions. I think schools like Kansas State, for example, or Kansas with Chris Kleiman and Lance Leipold, or Utah, these are schools that probably won't have as big of NIL collectives as other schools, and they may not use, especially in the case of Kansas, because they're a basketball school right now, they may not use as much of their allotted cap space for football as other sports, but they have such great staffs for now, and I'd say especially for Kansas and Kansas State for the near future, and Kyle Whittingham for maybe, I think, another year, 2, 3, or 4. He said he wanted to retire at a specific year, and he's getting closer to that every day. Those schools are so good developmentally that they'll always exceed their talent level as long as they have those specific staffers and coaches in place. And I'd even say currently, from what I know about Michigan's staff, it'll be similar. And I think it's the case with a lot of Big Ten schools, and also even some ACC and SEC schools. But I'm talking about exceptions to the rule. Schools in general that adamantly want to care about other sports more than football will fall behind in the sport of football, and it will be the same for basketball, of course. But I feel like I'm rambling a little bit. I want to get on to the ramifications and get into some of the details of this. Again, 14,500 athletes from 2016 to 2023 will be paid most of the $2.8 billion, because around a third of that $2.8 billion is going to the plaintiff's attorneys, as determined by the judge. The money will be divided between athletes pursuant to a formula created by a sports economist. Some money will be split equally between all athletes, so there will be like a base payment for all athletes, and then there will be an additional payment, or maybe that's the wrong phrasing of it, but then another part of the payment, this is probably a better phrasing, another part of the payment will be determined by the athlete's market value. The market value might be determined by factors such as career snap count, player star rating, what do they do, like how are they projected to be drafted in the NFL. Like I imagine, for example, Mitch Trubisky will be paid more than Graham Glasgow was in the NFL before 2016. I think he got drafted in the 2016 NFL draft. Mitch Trubisky will get paid more in this back damage payment, for example. North Carolina quarterback who was featured a lot for the NFL draft, of course, before he got drafted, which meant that he was being advertised on TV as a North Carolina player. He'll probably get more of this money than, let's say, Taco Charlton will from Michigan, or like JT Barrett will get paid more than Mike Gesicki, for example, just because of the quarterback's value over almost all other positions. JT Barrett being the quarterback for the Ohio State University, was probably the biggest fan base in college football compared to Penn State. It was a big fan base, but Gesicki's a tight end. That position is not valued as much monetarily, and Penn State's fan base is smaller. So I hope that explains some things. College football is now a professional sport. I wouldn't even say it's a mini professional sport. It's just a professional sport now. And what's stopping, I saw this on a Reddit, I think Reddit/CFB, a commenter that said, what's stopping the NCAA or some of these schools pining for a permanent 6th year of eligibility with maybe 2 red shirts, especially since many of these athletes, if they don't declare early for the draft, a lot of them graduate with master's degrees. And for most people, for your average student, that'll take 6 years. So why not give student athletes an extra sixth year, especially since that'll add depth and that'll add experience and that'll help familiar faces stay in college football longer. Potentially that will positively affect viewership. I don't know, but that's just an idea that I saw that I found to be kind of, interesting. And the players, now that they'll be paid for playing directly by the universities and also by NIL collectives, why wouldn't they be for it? They'll be getting, most of them will be getting six figures, and that's estimating that schools will spend a little more than half of their 21 to 22 million. That's the rumored cap space that all schools will be provided, or not provided, that's the wrong term, but expected to provide. That's the most that they can provide. Schools can spend less than their allotted cap space, which many schools will, because I can imagine Group of 5 schools, it will not be worth it to hash that much out for an athletic program, for a specific team. Even probably can't afford it. Many of those schools can or can't. I know UCLA, even in the Big Ten, was running into some financial troubles. And there are probably many other schools and Power 4 conferences, and maybe even some in the Big Ten and SEC that I don't directly know about, that will struggle to provide that amount, because that money, the 21 to 22 million, is expected to come from the universities and their athletic department directly. It could be through donors. Donors could donate to the athletic department and say, hey, this money is for that cap space, but they also could not. So donations to the athletic department are going to be, of course, important as well, not just for facilities, but now for players. I don't think college football is dead with this. I don't think the death of amateurism has to mean the death of college football, but more changes and rules and regulations and flexibilities will have to be provided. Otherwise, this can be total chaos. You can transfer whenever, and there's not whenever, unless you're a graduate transfer or you get an exemption. You can transfer in the winter and spring portal period. It feels like you can transfer whenever, but in that winter and spring portal period, you can transfer wherever you want if you can, and if they'll take you. Those schools will have to adjust their budgets to pay their athletes' salary directly. Again, the rumored cap is 21 to 22 million, with a 4% increase over 4 years. This was interesting. I found that fascinating. So 21 to 22 million annually per school for future revenue sharing. That number will also increase over the 10-year period of settlement based on 22% of the average Power 5 school revenues. So that's where the number comes from, is it's going to be 22% of the average Power 5 school revenues. The revenue categories being included are TV contracts, ticket sales, and sponsorship, but not donations. So donations, there's a lot of gray area there, again, both with the NIL collective and donating right to the school. Details also coming to light, this is reading directly from Forbes, include a 4% per year automatic escalator of the revenue figure for the first 3 years of the deal, with a reevaluation year 4 to see if what they need to do to tweak it. Decrease, increase, most likely going to be increase. Some monies already going to athletes will be credited toward the cap as well, including Alston-related payments. I don't exactly know what that means, but I figured I'd finish that paragraph. So there's going to be a cap for how much you can spend, but you don't have to spend up to that. Although it will hurt to not spend up to that maximum and compete with other schools that do, especially if the coaching between the two schools is equal. If coaching between two schools in a matchup is equal and one has the talent advantage, well then, that school has the advantage on the field. And I think all this will do is further separate the Group of 5 and the Power 5. You're no longer going to have Chris Peterson Boise State teams or Luke Fickell Cincinnati teams or Scott Frost and Josh Heupel UCF teams that can compete and beat and in some cases dominate Power 5 schools. I don't think you'll have those anymore. Or if you do, they'll have to be group of 5 schools where people intentionally pour revenue into them, that have strong donors that really want to commit to college football regardless of their TV contract level. I think you get the point there. I think NIL collectives, as I've stated earlier, could potentially be used to spend over the cap limit of $22 million. And finally, contracts and rules that incentivize loyalty, I think would help keep college football together. Because that's the next step of all of this. If you're going to pay athletes, if they're going to get a salary, it's time to give them a contract because they're contractors of the university. It's time to do that. In order for your contract to be fulfilled, you have to stay here for X amount of time. Or you'll get paid year to year, but you get a bonus if you stay here over the course of several years. A rather large bonus, perhaps. I think that's the next step. Again, I'm not an expert in any of this, so these are just my thoughts. And with that, all I have to say is, what do you think about all of this? Please tell me what you think down below and any possible solutions that you may have and some of your immediate reactions. Thank you all so much for watching this video. Remember to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell, and comment your thoughts down below. Thank you all again for supporting the channel, for watching this. I really appreciate it. Thanks to Crash2488 for sponsoring this video and channel as a Heisman patron. Thanks to Spencer Bringhurst, Chris Lane, and Connor Little OH for sponsoring this video and channel as an All-American patron. And thanks to Will Loftus, John Lynn, Roaming Gnome, Matthew Sale, Austin Christmas, and Janai Cockrell for sponsoring this video and channel as all conference patrons. Have a great day, guys, and I will see you all very soon. Bye-bye.